All right, we've gone through the basics of why you need to refine your PDFs, and now we're going to take a look at what it takes to actually build a basic imposition. So again, the goal is that we take in that refined PDF or set of PDFs. We're able to automate out all the imposition for going to a press plate and then add trim marks, crop marks included, add things like a color bar, which I've added here as well. So I'll kind of go through this process. Some of it's a little bit goofy to the way we have things set up here, but there's some universals as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this project. I'm not going to save it. And I'm going to go into preps and I'm going to create a new project. And what I'm going to do first is kind of walk through and define my job. So if you look at your job, you have the ability to go in and name, oops, if I don't delete it, you have the ability to go in and name all sorts of stuff. So like, what is my product name? What is my job name? So in this case, my project is a cover. So I'll say OS Keef flat cover. I could maybe put the dimensions in it. 11.25 by 17 because that's the dimensions. You know, what is the job ID? If I have an ID for my shop, what is my customer name? My customer today is going to be the CMG 270 course or Graphics 270 course, whatever it might be. And I can put in all sorts of other stuff. So binding, this would apply to your binding method, the way you're putting things together. This is a flat piece. It's just a cover, so there's no bind. So I'll put that on. And I might get a message to change style if that's because as a default applied. I'll select yes. Take a look at my planned colors. You can actually dial in all the colors, CMYK, or you can do combinations like I could do C plus K as an example, because this is a cyan and black duotone that I'm working with for this project. Comments, I can add all sorts of stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is set that up. I think the other thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and save the project out. And when I save this, I'm going to save this to the job data server that I'm connected to. I'm going to put it in with my project file. Just copied my name on that for the specific course and project I'm working with. In this case, I'm doing this in the 270 demo. So I'm going to put this in my OS demo flat cover, and I'm going to save this. What I should have now, if I go to look at that project file, is I now have the preps file along with my source PDF and my refined PDF that I'm going to use to build it. All right, let's jump back to preps. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and check my media tab. And what media relates to is the plate that essentially you're using to output this product. Now, we have a couple of options, so let me go in and take a look at that. We have the Trendsetter Quickmaster, we have the Trendsetter Speedmaster, so this is our small offset press, this will be our large offset press. We also have the ability to go out to work with laser printers, and eventually for flexo plating, there's a different workflow, but for this, we're going to take Quickmaster, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click on that, and that's going to pop up essentially the plate area for the press run. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to apply a stock to that. So stock would be based on what you're outputting, what you're making. But I'm doing an 11 and a quarter, or 11 by it'd be 11 by 17 and a quarter. So that's going to actually fit this area and barely allow enough room for some output if I put a 12 by 18 sheet on. So that's what I'll do. I'll put a 12 by 18 sheet on. Then what I want to adjust is what's called the punch position or distance for that plate. That's not showing right now, but I'm going to set that punch distance to 0.5 or half of an inch. It's worth noting that if you don't have the punch distance set correctly, the plate is actually going to output in such a way where it can't print. So half an inch is kind of the maximum punch distance that you run. All right, so with that set, this is ready to basically impose the product. So what I'm going to do is add some files to it. So a couple of ways. I could click, this would actually add product. I could go into files from the top and add it, or you can drag and drop. And I like drag and drop. So I'm going to take my refined PDF. Make sure you don't take the unrefined one. Take the refined PDF, and I'm going to drop that over onto the output. So now I have this this file that's been applied, and I'm going to go drop it onto my paper. essentially this is my paper area. And when it comes in, it'll eventually generate a preview. But what I need to do is work with rotating it to fit. So all your stuff on the right-hand side is going to give you that control. I'm just going to grab my page orientation and set it to either be right or left. So it's rotated. And I'm going to get that dropped on and roughly centered on the sheet. So now I have a plate, I have a press sheet or a stock of paper, and then I have my PDF applied to that. So what I'll do next is I'm just going to select the whole job. This is up in products, and I'm going to go start adding some marks to it. Now this is a little bit goofy, but most of our marks can be found in tutorial, and you can apply them and then customize them on the right. So what I'll do is I'll start with crop marks and just double click it, and they should be auto added, and they have been. If I go in, these are going to analyze the boundaries of your document and add the crops. And what's kind of cool about it is they can detect if you output a project that included a bleed. So like in Adobe InDesign, when we make a lot of our test forms, I say make sure you include the document bleed settings. Well, you actually don't even need to put trim marks on the PDF when you output from Adobe InDesign as an example. I mean, Illustrator could do the same thing, but you don't need to do it because you can actually add those in preps, and it will recognize the bleed boundaries and trim boundaries. So it's applied them in all four corners. We now have that. Kind of nice. All right, so what I'll do is kind of zoom back out and take a look at the next step. So this has been laid out. What we need to do next is add some registration marks, and I'll use registration top left as an example. I'm just going to double click it. Now when I bring it up, what you expect to see if you zoomed in is that there's a mark in the top left, and there is no mark. Why is it not showing? This one drove me nuts after we updated it. So what you want to check is the anchor position of that mark. If it's set to anchor in position to bleed, you don't see it. But if I choose press sheet, boom, it should show up, and there it is. Now it's not necessarily in the right position. So what you'll need to do is play with positioning. There's a lock which you can unlock, and then you can physically move it. I'm going to center mine kind of above the trim bar. So the idea is this is for color registration, and you want it outside the trim area. And then what I went in is I just worked with, there was a duplication setting, and the goal is eventually to get 4 registration marks all evenly placed around the outside. So in my case, I duplicated it. I made 2, and I offset the horizontal distance, I think, to be just outside the boundaries of my document edge, since my document was at 11 inches. So that automatically made a copy. So now I've got my top 2 registration marks, and I can do the same exact thing for the bottom as well. So maybe I'll start with like a bottom left reg mark, make sure that's set to the press sheet, and I'm going to kind of, the idea is you want these to be in line. So I've aligned this so from top to bottom, they're perfectly in line as well. So my top left to my bottom left should match. And then I just did the same approach. I duplicated this one out. Oops. If I can do it, I duplicated this one out so that it would appear in the bottom right as well. So now I have essentially trim marks and registration marks, and these are all filling into the negative area of my sheet. So for a lot of our projects, I've had you using a 1/2-inch margin on all your sheets. Well, that's to house these marks. So the last one that I'm going to add, I'll drop a color bar up top. Now, this is what's goofy. If you go up and you add color bar, it's going to apply it. And if we were doing a 4-color project, this would work just fine because it's a CMYK standard color bar. But for this job, we've made a customized color bar. And just the way our projects are set up with the server serving files, these are a little bit goofy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a top registration mark. I'm going to go to add that. But then if I look under the image file that's supplying that, there's a bunch of different images. Like I can have different registration mark types, but ganged in with that are customized color bars that we've made. And one of them is going to be a cyan and black color bar. So I'm going to add that and make sure that that is set on the press sheet. Pop that up at the top. And what you want to look for is to make sure that that is actually on your press sheet. Right now it's off of it on the plate. So I'll put it in, and yeah, I'm cutting into my marks a little bit, but I really don't care because it's on the press sheet and it's ready to go. Essentially, this should work just fine. At this point, this has been set up. It's ready for output. I've got trim marks, registration marks. I've got a color bar. And yeah, if my color bar conflicts, I don't care too much because it's going to be cut off eventually. It's going to be gone. It's outside the trim area. So with that said, I'll save my project one more time, and I'm going to do one more step. I'm going to run a file print, and I'm going to send this to PJTF, and you have to select that. It might come up as JDF. Make sure you send it to PJTF. That's going to be for the preps job ticket file. The media should be applied to our quick master media for the small plate maker, the small plate output. And I'm going to print this file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully make sure that this goes in with my project on the job data server. I'm not going to put this out to my desktop or anything like that. It has to go out to that job data server, and I'm going to group it with my project. So here it is. We're set. And this is pretty much ready to go. If I go back and just show you now, in my project folder, I have not only the project itself, but I have a project job ticket file. I'm not sure why that generated, but I have a project job ticket file and my preps file. After this, we're ready to go through Prinergy's workflow and test the product.